What's up, everybody? Brandon Lilly here with the Be Legendary podcast by Sorinex. Today, I am joined by Coach Michael Hill. He is the Associate Athletic Director of Sports Performance at Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., not Kentucky. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you for having me, man.
I appreciate it. I've been following you for quite a while now, just kind of getting a feel for who you are. But for those that are listening that may not necessarily know who you are or know a lot about you, just give me a brief intro as to who you are and what you're doing out there.
Yeah. The elevator speech is I am the Associate Athletic Director of Sports Performance at Georgetown University. Specifically, I am the head strength coach for Georgetown men's basketball. I've been here for 16-ish years, so I've been here quite a while. I came from California, but I'm originally from a small town in Iowa called Fort Dodge, Iowa. So just kind of like that small town kid with, big dreams to move away, kind of like Derek Woodsky says, but ended up in Washington, D.C. I only thought I was going to stay here for a year and ended up staying here for 16. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up right off the jump, because you are kind of the outlier in the strength and conditioning world. I mean, especially at the D1 level, it's pretty incredible to see a coach that will stick around for as long as you have. I mean, there's some rarities, but the story and the narrative that I get over and over when I'm talking to coaches, especially young ones, is that it's such a meat grinder out there. The idea of never ever getting that pay break that you're looking for, very seldom getting the job break that you're looking for. And a lot of these coaches just burn out and fade away before they ever get a chance to really get started. So speak to that a little bit with as far as the industry goes, but your experience being counter to that and why you think it's been counter to that.
Yeah, it's definitely, as my old boss, Coach Augie Morelli, would say, my mentor, it's a young man's game. And, I could honestly stay here at Georgetown forever, but I could also leave tomorrow knowing that I've given it my best. I've set myself up for success and I've set the next person up for success. I guess once I found this place, me being from Iowa, I grew up and I have my certain fans or certain teams, and I was a fan of certain things, but I was also, ironically, I was a fan of Georgetown basketball, in the 80s. In the 80s when I grew up, it was Coach Patrick Ewing and the Georgetown Hoyas, and so I was a fan.
Yeah.
So me coming here, I came here with the goal of getting this job, and so it was kind of that goal where I got here, and now I'm trying to build something that lasts and giving myself to this,
right.
I guess. But yeah, the industry now, and I've seen. We've had a great crop of interns come, volunteer interns, college level interns come through here, and you see it within a year. Sometimes they totally fizzle and burn out. Coach Todd Hammer said that we do a great job of growing our coaches here at Georgetown organically. And I think when we get here, we give them the roots, we give them all the tools, we put them in this kind of this safety bubble of you're going to fail, but not fail hard. Right. You're going to hit those guardrails. You're going to become a great coach. And it may be not in this profession. You may just get in, get out. And I just find each person's got to hold that to themselves, to their self. And everybody is different, but the industry with, I guess, talking about big time football is kind of pushing that coaching carousel mindset, and it's starting to trickle into men's basketball. Mm-hmm. But the majority of the time, there's so many limited resources out there. There's not many jobs that are being created at the college level. So people, they're getting frustrated with it. And I guess trying to, carve out the niche for sports performance or strength and conditioning or high performance or what, sports science, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of been morphing. And that morphing has led to people getting burnt out, as you say. So it's an interesting time. There's so much information out there, so many people that want to get in, and really the military is the only one that's opening up a lot more jobs. So
have you ever considered crossing over and going into that field as far as military specific training? Is that something that appeals to you at all?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, me growing, my dad was in the Army. So, my grandfather was and his grandfather. So had that kind of history. I had that conversation with my parents when I turned 18. And my mom was very adamant about me not going. In retrospect and looking back, I wish I had, because I needed that discipline. I guess, but now, I said this the other day, if I'm at the top of my game, if you should call it that, that's probably the time I should probably switch my game. And if I notice that, yes, I've kept my ear to the grindstone for those military jobs because I do want to give back. And it's kind of, as Burke says, he doesn't go home and watch football. He doesn't go home and, wear jerseys. Like I go home and put on camo pants, and a Riker shirt, or, it's a little bit different here. And it's great that Georgetown has actually accepted me for that. I get a slick back hair and a long beard and, yeah. But to your point, yes, I have considered crossing over.
Yeah, I think, for myself, just speaking to some of the work that I've done in regards to, the veteran outreach or specifically the Recon Sniper Foundation, but the way that I feel in regards to helping these individuals versus, just a general athlete, it's so much deeper. And it's not, I get a side of those veterans that a lot of people don't, because with my story, one of the things that we've talked about is the parallels of high achievement in athletics and then the fall off after career versus the fall off of, the post-military or the post-war veteran coming home. It's a big transition to go from that high level performance in either field and then just kind of going into a slowdown into a regular life, so to say. And, I've kind of navigated some of those waters very well, and some of those waters have put me, nearly in my grave. But I think that just being a reference point for some of these individuals has really helped me grow, and that's kind of why my appeal keeps coming back to that tactical unit. I shouldn't even say tactical unit because it's more the veterans that are coming home segment. But I just think it's a really, really needed thing. One of the courses that I got to lead was with some of the SEAL teams out at Dam Neck. And one of the most interesting parts of that, I was talking to Phil DeRue, he's an MMA coach down in Florida, about this. But some of the SEALs that I worked with, their programming was around an RPE scale. And to me, that made absolutely no sense for a human being that you've designed to say that nothing hurts. And
yeah, exactly.
So what you were saying was just this extreme overuse injury, stress injuries and things like that. And, just having the wherewithal to get their respect in what I was saying, because they know I've lived some of that as far as, the high level training and whatnot. So I think that coaches like yourself, coaches that can look at the world a little bit outside of themselves, can really start to make an impact in that field. So I encourage you, if it's something that you're into, I could definitely help you with some inroads there. It's just to kind of test the waters and see what you feel. And I'm sure you have your own, but I just want more people to realize that these guys, it's a real opportunity to do a lot of good in the world and help these guys get back on their feet. But it's cool, man. Who did you say was your in the military in your family?
My father, and then my grandfather was in World War I and II, and then my dad's brothers, and so yeah, in the family previous, my great grandfather and whatnot.
Yeah. So you're talking about the aspect of being there for 16 years and creating a culture and building something that so when you leave, it's as good or better than when you're there. I feel like a lot of coaches are really kind of egomaniacal in the fact that they believe that a system can't run without their presence. How have you found a balance to where you're okay with the fact that they could get better without you, and the legacy that you've left there to say, I am the springboard to improvement at Georgetown University?
I guess, that's I didn't come in thinking that. I know that my mentor, Coach Augie Morelli, he came in and he was, he would always talk about life after this job and preparing yourself, having your A plan, which is the plan you're having now, your B plan, your C plan, but also your eject button, and get out of the industry. And I think that's I guess I can't speak for every coach, but I would gather every coach in the professional setting, in the collegiate setting, has one foot in, one foot out. They're constantly talking to people. Some people may say they're all in, but they're also listening to other jobs as they go. And that's just the nature of that business. So when I came in here, that was kind of, it was ingrained into me with Coach Morelli is, hey, you need to have, if you were fired tomorrow, where would you go work in the Washington, D.C. area? If you had to leave and get and go from this location to another location, or are you willing to do that? Do you have any ground routes set up? Do you have a good thick Rolodex worth of contacts that you could call? Because once somebody gets fired, the phone ironically just doesn't pick up on the other end sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Whereas when you have a job and you say, hey, I'm Mike Hill from Georgetown basketball, people, they're like, oh, hey, Jordan basketball shoes. I love it. Right. I love your stuff. Hey, let me talk to you. If I got fired tomorrow, that phone would be click on the other end or beep or busy or whatever. And so Coach Morelli, he taught me a lot in the weight room, but he taught me even more outside of the weight room. And so I guess having that mindset of everybody is irreplaceable, I want to make my impact on the next person and just do right by this program, and do right because they've shown me so much loyalty, and respect. And I would like to do the same for that. And, if I were to say leave tomorrow, I would have some recommendations on, hey, this is a person that I would like to fill the position that could do a 10 times better job than me. Ryan Horn could come in and do 10 times better job than me because he's way smarter. He knows more. He's engaged. I would love him to follow me. And there's other coaches into that. And you would, to your point, to be egotistical about that. You can't. I've been in this business long enough to know that you have to prepare yourself for that. And it's not something that's always on my mind, but every once in a while you got to think about it.
Yeah, man. And, something I appreciated, I listened to your Black Flag podcast prior to this, and something that I really, really appreciated in there was you let your coaches coach. I think sometimes as a director of human performance, you can really bog down your systems there by trying to have too much control. How did you find yourself, one, in the position where you are as kind of overseer and associate director to these other sports, but also the confidence to let your coaches coach and only step in when needed? How do you find the time, or when is the indicator that you need to step in, and how do you build that relationship so that you can step out?
Yeah, I guess I keep talking about Augie, but I wouldn't be here without him. But right when I came in, he threw me to the wolves. He was the only strength coach that was here full time. There was another strength coach, Coach Harrison Bernstein. And then we had some work study people that were coaching as well. They were just football players on the team that just knew how to lift. But Coach Morelli was like, if I give you a team, women's lacrosse, and I have to speak to the women's lacrosse coach about your program, now I am the head strength coach. I've just broken that communication gap. Now, if there's ever a problem, that coach is going to go to him and not you. That's kind of my number one rule. If I have to speak to your sport coach, I'm the head strength coach and you are not. We did weekly meetings with our intern staff, and me being the first intern, it grew from, I guess, me and putting my feet in this soil, and then kind of figuring out the landscape around the Washington, D.C. area to where now people get fed to us, where we don't have to go literally recruit them from a Gold's Gym.
Right.
But I guess now the price of admission is knowing and being certified, knowing all that stuff. What I find is the practical application of, have you ever done 5 snatches in a row? Well, you haven't. Well, you got to figure that out because you don't want your team doing that, right? Right. Have you ever trained at this percentage for this long? Have you ever squatted super heavy as a that practical application, that's what I find is lacking in the coaches who are coming in. And so if we, Coach Morelli made me lift with him. I did a Bulgarian lift. He was a Bill Starr guy, so we big three'd all the time until, our nose literally bled, and, gripping it from the floor and just ripping it. And he'd always say, we don't got time for percentages. HRV obviously didn't exist with him, and RPE scale certainly didn't exist. But I learned doing that. So that's what we do with our coaches who are here is you have to train. You take full ownership. It's your team to lose. I stand back at a distance and I kind of watch the gorillas in the mist a little bit. And if I have to make my way into that and talk to you, I will talk to you as a coach privately, never interject overall. If there's a safety issue, yes, we will definitely jump in. But there's always another coach around. There's always myself, Coach Dave Terry, Christina Orsino, or Miguel around. But again, these coaches that we get they're not green anymore. They're different shade, I guess. They've had jobs, they've got a master's. So it's more of just letting them go, really, and letting them flourish.
I think that's one of again, it goes back to a lot of the ego and the control, either from the coach to accept your help on the front end, as a performance director, to hear what you have to say, to implement the tools that you're giving them as far as resources, like you said, GPS tracking or whether it be some kind of blood testing, whatever it is. Your side of it is to do the analysis, correct? Is that the way that I'm kind of placing you in this role? You do the analysis of everything. So you're kind of the data collector, the data reviewer, and then you can be the most valuable asset in the world to a coach. But I think it takes a really strong set of people, who have, one, climbed the ranks within the industry, two, to have titles and letters and certifications after their name, to listen to other people. I really find it's kind of shocking to me that in a day and age when there's so much information out there, to the point where if you're not willing to accept that you could be wrong, you're probably obsolete within a few years. But I just continually see these headbuttings between coaches and their staff, or departments between human performance and direct coaching, in the weight room. How have you been able to navigate a lot of that stuff and build these relationships and trust in what you're doing? Because the times that I've seen it, from non-implementation to, we have a sports performance program now and we're going to do this, this, and this, I see strong pushback. So how have you kind of navigated those pushbacks or any of those setbacks?
I guess, we definitely have, teams that don't want to use us, or teams that just schedule not an in-season but an off-season. I guess, the term that came to mind talking about the military is giving these coaches, decentralized command. Like they can make choices without, having to consult me for every little bit. But
how frustrating is that, though, to do this work and to have this capability and just see that someone is unwilling to listen?
No, it definitely is. There's definitely been some, and I can't call people out. There's definitely been, through my years, there's been some people where I'm like, I do not agree with anything that you are doing, but if you believe in it, and if your athletes believe in it, and if the coach believes in it, hey, do whatever you want, fly your flag. We've had, back, I will say this, and you've had him on, is Coach Chris McQuilkin, who is at the Power Athlete. And he came to me, and it was a favor from a friend to get him in, sit him down and interview him. He was CrossFit. He was CrossFit football. He wanted to get in the collegiate setting. Anybody with a closed mind, or I should say a fixed mindset, would probably not have taken him, but I saw something in him. I liked how unique he was and outside the box. I brought him on here, hired him, and gave him a team, gave him crew. I did not agree with probably 90% of the stuff that he was doing, but he believed in it. He got his athletes to believe in it. He got the coaches, and sooner or later, now he's literally 1 degree away from everyone that I want to talk to.
Right.
Within the field, and he's very smart, astute coach. And so, it's a lot of times it's giving people a chance, but, that's on the front end. On the back end, there's been a lot of, broken eggs And I've had to, kind of swallow my pride, but also taking it that I take myself seriously, but not too seriously. So, I have my own faults. So, take it upon myself and the rest of the staff to coach the coaches and be a leader. They're not always going to succeed. If we give them structure, if we govern them, then they will function well, I guess.
What if, one of the questions that I've always had, and it kind of takes me back to the days working with some of the SEAL teams. And I really review the RPE stuff and the percentages stuff, with them. But what I want to talk to you about is exactly what you were talking about with Chris, is that a lot of the stuff that he was doing, you from a data standpoint or from maybe just an education standpoint didn't agree with, but belief superseded the information, right? You have these people that bought in and they were ready to go. How long do you expect the progress to be made before the negatives start to impact that training? That was the thing with the SEALs. Individual trainings, like if you came in and you said, hey guys, we're going to push really, really hard today. We're going to do something phenomenal. We're going to hit a PR or a rep PR or a time PR. They would ultimately achieve that, But it was the it was the intermediate between test day to test day where you could really just like grind them into the dirt. But on test day, they would still come in and perform because that's the kind of people that they are. How much credit do you give to an athlete's will to just be better in advancing them, not only as a specimen, but also as an athlete? But then from your side, are you just looking at it like, okay, this is just like a runaway train? Like, yeah, this is really, really good until it explodes. And I'm raising my hand here because I think that was me in powerlifting. I was doing a lot of the things that started to defy some of the literature and the information out there as far as progression and waves and those kind of things. And I started to believe that I was an invincible person because, well, I was supposed to be getting weaker during this phase, but I kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger until I finally broke. How do you battle some of that stuff where the coach is only reinforcing what he already believes because he has a group of kids that are willing to just bleed for him?
I guess, that's the art form of it, is knowing and having your pulse on all those factors, what the ATC is saying, what the body's saying, what the coach is wanting you to do, the day, the time, your biorhythms, all that stuff, solar flares, however your body is being affected, and knowing that. But that's the hard part, I guess, looking in terms of basketball, the team that I have, I've got basically 12 guys now. And so 12 guys on the team, I probably got 2 that I have to dial back. The other bottom half, I have to wrench up. And the other ones in the middle, they'll do whatever I say, really. And so that's kind of the programming within the whole program. My program, I feel like I've gotten dumber, and programming wise, when you come in, you're like, what the hell is this? And, I would feel very comfortable if somebody else outside the program wrote my program and I just coached and I just, manipulated and auto-regulated everything. Because I feel like that all that information, I can plug it into my algorithm in my head, spit it out, and then make the athletes believe whatever I tell them to do. And that's kind of the learning, that's my mom was a teacher for 40 plus years. My sister is now. And so it's kind of like, that's what I'm doing here. I'm creating this environment here. But that's the hard part with speaking to the younger athletes, and speaking of all our younger coaches and our athletes, is that's the really hard part. And that, I think that just comes from, just being a veteran, just year over year, making those mistakes and then learning from those mistakes and moving forward. Because I look back and I'm like, wow, the programs that I had at the beginning when I first got here, they were amazing. Programming, 72.5%, whatever, back off this, undulating all over the place. But now they're super simple to the point where literally my numbers in the off season are even. My numbers in the in season are odd. And I do that for specific reasons, but also to keep the athletes engaged and know it's go time. It's, this is off season, this is in season. But anyway, that's I guess the hard part. That's the art form of it.
Well, speaking of art, and I know that you're an avid reader, and I love your page for that. I think it's a really important thing for men like yourself, coaches like yourself as well, to just show in an industry where it is chaotic, it is busy, there are not enough hours in the day. You're still dedicating to that personal investment by reading and whatnot. I just don't think enough coaches do that. I don't think enough coaches get outside their day-to-day curriculum of coaching and actually try to broaden their scope of human. I think that makes you a much better coach. The more that you know, the more that you read, the more that you can communicate with different types of people and have different trains of thought, the more impact you can have, because somewhere down the line, there's going to be a kid that needs something that you can't give them. And
exactly,
if you're willing to learn and ask questions and push, I think it's a really, really awesome move on your part. And I want to come back to that, but it reminded me, you've posted a few not martial arts, but Asian culture books or mindset books from Buddhism and whatnot. Do you find that your coaching is also a reflection of your internal toil, as far as, you've kind of taken more of this life can happen as it happens approach, and instead of trying to maximize the newest, latest, and greatest, you're kind of like, what if I just go back to the barbell? What if I just go back to a kettlebell and start there and work my way out? Because that's kind of where I've been. I mean, and I'm asking this for your leadership on it, because, for 20 years or close to 20 years, it was squat, bench, deadlift, and the accessories. Squat, bench, deadlift, and the accessories. And then when I get outside of that, it's like I never really learned how to clean or do snatches or any of this other stuff. So it's like I'm kind of relegated to squat, bench, and deadlift, and the accessories. Or I can go and say, what if weight is irrelevant? What if training protocols are irrelevant? What if I just develop a new relationship with the barbell, with the dumbbell, and the kettlebell and see what happens? That's why I never have an idea of what I'm going to do going into the gym. I kind of have like, it's an upper day, or it's a lower day, or it's a high intensity day, or it's a maximal day. But beyond that, I just pretty much walk in the gym, and it's like, here are the things that kind of illuminate to me and make sense to me today. And I just go about it in that direction. How have you kind of devolved your adherence to these strict and always evolving programs down to just the genesis of what training actually is?
I guess, religion, programming, barbell, simplicity, complexity, all in that question. I guess in answering, my parents and my family, my grandparents are from Norway. They came here. So you could say, Valhalla and Vikings, whatever, that's rooted in my life. I got, for every single birthday, I got a little, like I said, in the Black Flag podcast, I would get a little Viking with a famous person, so I would learn about this. But I grew up in Iowa being a Lutheran, a Christian Lutheran. But now, speaking to those books, I went to church. I never really sang. I was very silent, and I didn't really participate in that. And at some point, it just, I didn't really believe in any of that. And now it's more towards me living kind of by, and the term, just put it in terms of Bushido code, right? The 7 virtues: integrity, respect, courage, honor, compassion, honesty, and loyalty. Those are the real things that I actually try and live and breathe every single day, and try and be the example for the athletes. And that speaks to me a little bit better, kind of the be positive, self-mastery, feeder mindset type style. Mm-hmm. But also at the same point, the term, when the student is ready, the teacher will be there. That can be applied to a lot of different things, like the barbell. Like with Cal Dietz, all of a sudden now triphasic, it's been around for a while, but that stuff, time under tension and rep schemes, and it's not just moving that top end, it's also moving the bottom end and time under tension and how you manipulate it. But like what Vernon Griffith always talks about, it's intent. What is your intention to do? You can grab that bar, you can cue the crap out of it, for 20 seconds up and down, and all of a sudden you got a fatigued athlete. Right. But it comes back to your beliefs and how much you care, and emulating that and radiating that towards the athlete, and then the athlete will care just as much, because I've done the same thing. I grew up, I played every single sport. I wasn't good at anything, or great at anything. I was just good at everything. And I'm saying from sailing to snowboarding to boxing to baseball, basketball, track, whatever it was, I could do it. I was good at it, but not really great. And so I didn't really, I could definitely not deadlift 600 or 500 or probably 400 or probably 300, even back in high school, but I could do the movement. I could make it look good. And if you cued me up, I could definitely move in a certain way. And same thing with, every day I post, kind of the grind, these eyes, because those eyes stare at me, these bulldog eyes here in this basketball court. But that's kind of the grind every single day and trying to better myself. I could go out and run for days and play for hours. I was really hard to break down. And I utilized that skill for a very long time. And then all of a sudden I fell in love, like you said, you're saying is I fell back in love with the barbell. And I started doing full on Olympics 6 days a week. And, and I hadn't benched for a very long time. Now I'm getting kind of back into it, body weight style stuff, kind of like a Thor 3 style program, I guess, if you say. But yeah, it's interesting when, you're looking at these, the scenery all day long, every day. And all of a sudden, holy crap, this is here. Yeah. Like this barbell's here. Wow, these kettlebells are here, and you just kind of fall in love with it again. Mm-hmm. But that just speaks to like the passion that we have,
for sure. And how is your training? Like, what like type of modality are you using right now? Or are you, like you said, the Thor 3, but is it evolving, or is that just kind of where you're at the moment?
It's definitely evolved. There was a big. Like I said, when I first got here, I grinded hardcore. Coach Morelli put me through the meat grinder. And then I kind of dialed it back because I kind of got scared that I would get injured and that, there wasn't any workman's comp if I, popped my shoulder out snatching.
Right.
And so I dialed that back down. But I always loved to play basketball. I always loved to be, quotes, in shape. As the coaches call it. But I always wanted to be ready for everything. When the zombies hit, I want to be able to jump over that wall and do whatever and fight a little bit. But right now, and I said it a while ago, I was doing just only Olympic for a good probably 5 years. And now it's morphed into Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm doing kind of Olympic sports performance type stuff. But then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, it is, I'm still getting my shots up in my, I guess, long, slow distance cardio with shooting around spot shots, but I still run a mile almost every day. Run a mile, and then I do push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, however many rounds, and different kind of variations of that. But Saturday is my kind of just openness, maybe take a class, maybe go to yoga, maybe jump on a bike, maybe go out and, go for a hike or a walk or something like that. So I'm just trying to get, a little bit of everything into that program now.
Well, I think it speaks to what you talked about before. Like, I relate very, very heavily to what you said is, especially in high school, I had some standout athleticism, but it was like I was just indirect about where I applied it. I loved basketball. I was good at basketball. But I was like, I'm not 6'5". I'm probably not going to the NBA. Like, I had very, very unrealistic expectations of myself. Like, from the time I was little, I can remember when I bought my motorcycle in college, it was like I didn't buy it to just have a crotch rocket and ride around. Like, I literally wanted to go to Mid-Ohio, race that track, get myself into a situation where I was a pro racer. I just never invested in things to half-ass it. So like basketball, once I kind of realized, okay, you're not 6'5", you're not 6'6", you're not able to do a lot of the things that your competition are doing. We had some really great talent around us. So I got a very realistic scope of what my talent level was. And it was all effort over skill. I was a much better soccer player. So I dropped basketball for soccer. Ended up switching schools and lost my eligibility in high school because of Kentucky passing a recruitment law. Like, as I was changing schools, you had to move residents when you move schools. And we just, we lived, I was actually switching to the school district I should have been in rather than the one that I'd been in my whole life. But nevertheless, I found myself always kind of like okay, there's something out here. There's a capability here, and I didn't know what. And as soon as I found throwing, and then I found weightlifting and powerlifting, it was like everything took off. But now I very much agree with what you're saying. Is like, I look around the world today, and I don't want to make this a political talk, but I look around the world today and I see a lot of instability, and I see a lot of people that just live, as if this is going to go on forever. And it's kind of like, I need to be prepared for things if they were to happen, not like sitting here a doomsday planner, but the reality of like, at one point in time, I couldn't walk 100 yards without getting somewhat short of breath, a high pulse, and back pumps. That was 340 pounds of my powerlifting days. I was extremely strong, but like the capability and the honest answer of could you protect yourself? Could you protect your friends? Could you protect your family? And I'm not talking about being a badass and walking down the street and trying to fight everybody, but I'm saying like if something happened and a guy, impacted your life in a negative situation and you had to go 500 yards, could you do it? At that point, I probably couldn't, and where I am now, it's like, I want to hike, and then I want to hike with weight. I want to hike holding something, carrying something, and just learning myself, like, what are my limits? It doesn't have to be super, super fast. It doesn't have to be super, super strong, but it's like, can I do this over and over and over and over again? And for how long? That's where I'm kind of finding the deep water for myself as far as my rows, my hikes. I'm not doing as much running as I was because it just kind of, the toll of, like I said before, I could do it really, really hot and intensely. And then kind of when I started having the really bad knee pain and the foot pain, it was too late. I was like, you got to just stop completely for a while now. So I'm trying to like tiptoe into the waters in a bunch of different directions just to be a capable human. I think that's a very sexy kind of thing going around the internet right now, like be a capable human. But for me, it's intrinsic. For me, it's very, very deeply rooted inside of me that I take pride in being able to do things and do unique things and different things. How is that kind of the same wave that you're on as well? I mean, that's kind of what I'm gathering.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, myself, following you for a long time, and it's you're searching for something. There's that internal drive that you want to be able to do. And if somebody tells you you can't do this, then you want to be able to, you also want to be able to do it. It's like, okay, I can do it, but okay, you're talking how much weight? Okay. You're talking how far? Right. You're talking this. But yes, I can, I can do this. I can strike. I can swing the kettlebell. I can, clean. I can row. I can run a mile. Okay. Maybe I can't run 3 miles at that speed, but I can still do this. Yeah. And that just kind of, me now having, like you with your family, it's myself. I have a 5-year-old and teaches me a lot more than myself. I could read out of a book. And so I want to be there for her life and my wife. And so it's kind of myself, keeping myself in check and keeping myself healthy and not just pigeonholing myself into one aspect of training of life. I guess life is adaptable and for me, taking on that adaptability and evolving and passing on and replicating my DNA and to the next and just growing. That's really in general what I'm trying to do.
Do you think that your wife looks at you as like just this crazy never-ending project sometimes, like not necessarily for her, but for yourself? Like you're always looking for the next thing. You're always trying new things. Do you go pretty deep water whenever you get into something, like down the rabbit hole with YouTube videos and books and application?
Oh yeah. She definitely thinks I'm crazy. She's, my neighbors do too. I'm out there. I kind of flip flop. So like now it's colder here in DC. Yeah. So I try and go out with really nothing. Try and go out with shorts or it snows out here every once in a while. And this growing up in Iowa, my dad was always like, you go out there in shorts, you don't bundle up. That's when people get heart attacks, but you go out there in shorts and a t-shirt. One, the neighbors will think you're a little bit crazy, but two, it'll make you go a little bit quicker and get you warmed up. Right. So I go out there and do that. But at the same time, I can mow my yard in 100 and whatever degrees with a stocking hat on and a hooded sweatshirt and pants. Like I try and flip the mindset of it so nothing can control me. I still, I've been doing this for quite some time, pretty much my whole life, is I don't turn the heater on in my car until it gets below 30. Right. So even when it's below freezing, so I'm trying to kind of test myself at the same time, the air conditioning I try not to use the air conditioning at all, really, during the summer, and try to use wind if I'm in a car. At home, I guess inside my home, when there's other people in there, it's a little different. But when I'm by myself, I try and challenge myself. There's like this battle that I'm going for, and I'm not really sure what it is.
Dude, I'm the same way, man.
Maybe the zombies will hit, but I'll be ready, I guess. Yeah.
What do you think that is? I mean, I wrestle with that because I'm the same way. Like, I'll pull up. I mean, I do it all the time when I go to Walmart or somewhere like that. It's like, can I be in and out of here in 20 minutes? So it's like, go. Everything that I do is hyper competitive with myself. Like I just don't know what that is, and it's maddening a lot of the time. But at the same time, I think it's probably been one of my strongest attributes, in self-propulsion, is the fact that I do not get settled. I do not just sit and rest on my laurels. Shout out to Derek Woodsky's post this morning. But, I find that I enjoy it at some level, but at the other level, it's like, God, I wish I could turn this off. Do you ever wrestle with any of that?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Same thing with, the books and the learning and the YouTube and all that stuff. If I sit, sometimes I have to program, just being spontaneous and just doing something, because I've filled all my gaps of dark matter around me that, if I'm sitting still, I turn and look at my board and, oh man, I got this projects I got to work on, or I got to read this book, or I got to get in my 20 pages tonight. But it's also kept me very disciplined where I can afford all that stuff. But it's maddening at some level that I'm constantly looking for that. And hopefully it never turns off and I don't retire from that. It's, just in preparing for this, preparing for podcasts, preparing for other things, I try and prepare myself the night before and set myself up for success for everything. And if I don't, I kind of go a little bit crazy. When we have lifts, I've thought about it 24 hours in advance. I'm nervous for it, right? And nervous in a good way, to try and make it be successful. It's probably a somebody could call it a weakness, but it's also a strength.
Yeah, I think and I think it's really how you apply it. I mean, I tell people a lot. I think my coaching is somewhat. I heard you mention that you're kind of a life coach in many ways, but my coaching has really turned a lot from reps and sets to. I think there's been an appeal from the outside where my life has evolved in different directions, that a lot of my clients have kind of either evolved with me, or the ones that were just strictly here for performance kind of waned off and went their own direction or went with another coach. And I brought in new people that are seeking different modalities or seeking different extensions for their life to be enhanced. I strike a balance with my organization because to me, I can be very obsessive compulsive with planning. And then I can also be like, planning doesn't matter because my life evolves by the minute. How do you deal with some of that? Because I've been told, and I've heard you speak, that you are very planning oriented. You have your boards, you have your specific boards for specific tasks, specific branches of your life. How do you balance some of that? Because for me, if I was to absolutely adhere to a planned protocol, well, the fact that I get a phone call and it's like, hey, I need you here at this date at this time, that would throw my whole plan off. So I try to have parameters, but I try not to drive myself crazy with it. Do you struggle with that at all?
I feel like from going back to me at a young age, I didn't learn how to read for many years, and that my mom was frustrated with that. Also, self-diagnosing myself with ADD, but a doctor, but it's helped me to organize when I'm even listening to a speaker. I'm writing down questions. I go through these little checkpoints that make me stay focused on the task or the goal. And I've kind of, I guess, have learned to keep myself structured. So again, structure, govern, function is to structure myself that way so I can be governed and function at a high level. And I guess the same point. Yeah, it's a little maddening. I'm sitting here looking at my calendar in front of me for the month. To the right, I got my professional goals, my team goals, my projects, my self-improvement, things that are over there. But also I have, my 2 different books, one with crazy ideas that just kind of pop in my head, spontaneous ideas that come in, about writing a book or a movie line or a quote or something that I think is I don't want to lose. And so I write that out, but then kind of my daily journal. But all of those have helped me focus and each day built on that success, I guess, for the day. And it's, I guess, just me knowing myself. If I didn't have any of this stuff, and if I didn't create these kind of checkpoints for myself, I would definitely be all over the map. I probably would still be living living in my hometown, which I actually do love.
Sure.
But I probably wouldn't have gotten outside of that box. And it's kind of given me kind of these roadmaps and just kind of these GPS checkpoints to make myself more disciplined and successful.
Do you ever look at your parents kind of as, you say you got out of that town. Did you ever grow up with any kind of resentment? I mean, maybe it's evolved into something different now, but when I was a kid, I'll just give you the example of where I'm going with this. When I was a kid, I was very resentful of the fact that my parents were they were ordinary. You know what I mean? They punched the time clock, they put in their hours, they came in, and it used to drive me crazy that it's like, you guys can't see the forest for the trees, and they're telling me, well, you can't see the forest for the trees. You think the world is this big, wonderful, awesome place that is just perfection. There's a lot of pride in building a life. And I think there's truth to both sides, but I still, like this morning, I've kind of gone down, my latest rabbit hole is photography. I was really, I think for a long time, like I resented the fact of media production for social media. I just resented it outright. And it was the reason I say that was because I believe that information is, good information is good information regardless of how it's delivered. And what I was finding was, there are a lot of really great coaches that either couldn't afford or didn't have access to the type of media production quality that some of these jabronis out here have. And it became an inverse of information. What information that was cool and trendy and sexy led the way rather than the deep dive information. So I kind of at a personal level resisted high level media stuff. But it's also like, well, asshole, you're just compromising yourself and you're compromising the message that you might be trying to send. So I invested in a camera system. I invested in learning about it. And, my mom, she's loved photography forever. She literally has a camera that a photograph has never been seen from. She takes pictures at every event, and I've never seen a photograph. And that in one little dwindling is her to a T. Like she has all these visions, all these dreams, all this talk, and very, very, very little action behind it. Now, that used to drive me crazy, but as I see her now, and I see how happy she is, and I see the way that her life goes, she's awesome, and I respect it. But it's just not a life I would ever want to live. Is that kind of how you felt? And do you feel some regret that you couldn't stay at home and enjoy that life?
No, I guess, for me, I love it. I don't take many vacations, and the only vacations I take, I go back home. And I do that because I do love the people. I think it's a great community where I grew up in. Yeah. And my parents, my dad, being an accountant and also a farmer, we had a farm. We didn't live on the farm, but I had to work there as well. But my mom being a teacher, it was a simple, very kind of ordinary growing up atmosphere.
Well, it sounds like American Gothic, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean that
with respect, by the way.
It was perfect, and honestly, I could go back there and live, tomorrow. And I love the place. I try and promote it as much as I possibly can. And just reading, I finally read, and Jeff Struker, who was in Black Hawk Down. I finally just read the book, but he's from Fort Dodge, Iowa. He's from my hometown, and he was a Humvee driver that was in the battle. And I just had read it, and I put it up on Instagram. But there's been many people who I look up to, like Jeff, who have come from my hometown who I respect. And it's a good community, a good place to live and have a family. And so, I would literally have no regrets. I have no regrets about leaving, but also I could go back there and live out the rest of my life. But I at the time, when I was growing up, I knew that I had to go somewhere else to achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve, sure, and to grow me as a human. My parents, they didn't just stay in our hometown or stay in Iowa. They traveled really the world, and they took me and my sister all over. Sweet. And we've been, everywhere. And so that kind of helped us as well. It's like, you travel all over to come back home and hang out at your house. It's like, my favorite place to go is literally my house, and kind of a homebody, but also, I've traveled the world too. Yeah. And so it's kind of, it's kind of goes back to the yin and yang, and then simplicity at complex, kind of, the homebody yet world traveler. So kind of both not taking yourself too seriously, but taking yourself seriously. So
I think it's interesting that we had different views of our childhood, but we have both kind of come to the same end, because I live in my hometown. Mm-hmm. I live where I grew up. Yeah. And like I said, I had this, it was a respect, but it was also a resentment. But see, my parents never traveled much. I mean, it was Gatlinburg and Myrtle Beach, Gatlinburg and Myrtle Beach. That was our trips every year. Spring break, we would probably go down there on a weekend to Gatlinburg. In the summer, we had a week down in Myrtle Beach at the Indigo Inn for 30 years. It was just repetition. Mm-hmm. But I, like you, have had the privilege to travel the world and to see a lot of different things, and to be in a different places. So when I am home, it affords me the desire and the ability to become a recluse. Like when I am home, I have a very, very tight triangle of places that I go. It's either home, Owsley Fork, where I go and just kind of do, stretching. I do some of my cold water dips there, as well as just yoga, reflection, meditation, whatever it might be, or whatever I might need that day. That's a very calming, very happy place for me. And then Native Bagel, which is a place that I go up there, take my laptop, able to get a really good cup of coffee, see a few people that I might be interested in speaking to or saying hi to, as well as throwing the headphones on and working. So when I'm at home, I love that process. I got the gym right out here in the garage. My training day, actually, it can go all day long. If I walk through the garage, it's a commitment. If I go through there, I have to do 10 pull-ups. So, throughout the day, I might walk through there 10 or 15 times. And that's just kind of a cool obligation to myself. But one of the things that I'm finding now is that as much as I've traveled, I don't like to travel just for the sake of travel anymore. Like, it gets very mundane and it gets very, very old, very, very fast. But fortunately, being within the Sorinex community and some of the things that I get to do with Sorinex, they're unbelievable. So it's almost made me somewhat selfish of my travel time. It's like, I don't want to just go to Chicago again to go up there and do this or that. I want to go to Chicago when there's an art festival or a food festival or a movie festival or some kind of event going on that can enhance what Chicago actually is to me. So I've become more protective of that. You kind of feel the same in that regard, as you've done enough travel to where traveling just for travel's sake is no longer fun, but you want to really invest in what you're going for.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife is from Italy. She's from Siena, Italy, and wine country. So
beautiful people there.
Yeah. So, we have been there, been all over Europe, I guess, still have family, distant cousins in Norway. So Norway, all over. Basketball has afforded me to travel to different countries, China, where we got into a brawl. But we, South Korea, been to bases, all over really. And so, yeah, but I do agree with you. Yeah. Travel gets really old really quick. And I guess, I've been very fortunate and lucky to travel, very well. And so now when you go to you're trying to go to Orlando, or you're trying to go to somewhere, and just kind of go there to be spontaneous. It's like, okay, what's the fun in that? I could be spontaneous here in my hometown, or go back and see my parents and see my mom, and my dad and my sister. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's funny, having a wife from Italy and then being from Iowa, It's like my daughter wants to go to Iowa, even though she's been to Italy, and multiple times. And same thing with my wife. So kind of interesting.
That's kind of a fascinating take on it, because I think the average person would consistently say, Italy, just based on name. But there's obviously something for you. There's obviously something for your wife and your child in Iowa that makes it very, very special. And that's kind of what I'm finding here, is that, the things that drove me crazy about Berea as a hometown are still the things that drive me crazy about Berea as a hometown. But what I've found is better relationships with my parents, better relationships with my family and friends. So coming home is no longer the place where it's like, I can't wait to go on my next trip. It's like, man, I don't want to leave so soon. And that to me is a huge, huge shift in who I am and where I am in life, because before, as fast as I could get out of this town, the better, Mm-hmm. So speaking of family and friends, I remember on the podcast with Black Flag, you mentioned that if you could have a dinner, I think it was, or a conversation, it would be with your grandfather or your grandparents?
Yeah, my grandparents. They all kind of passed away, besides one of my my grandmother when I was younger. Yeah. So I want to take a little different note, since you've already answered the family member, who I guess your top preference would be. Who's someone that's influenced you from a sense of celebrity, or had an impact on you that is recognizable as an authority outside of your family? Someone that maybe you've never had a chance to talk to, or maybe they've passed on, but you would love to have a coffee with this person and just kind of pick their brain, because you really push the envelope with the books that you read and the depth that you go. Yeah. So this is I wouldn't ask this of everyone. So I very much respect what you're going to say, whoever it is. And it's a curiosity of mine. I guess, the simplest would be, everyone says, Einstein, or probably a Stephen Hawking or something. They're very smart. Yeah. But I read this book and kind of shifted my mind. It's called The Science and the Akashic Field. It's an integral theory of everything. So it's trying to put it all kind of together, but it's Irvin Laszlo. And so, probably him. And so I say that as the Akashic field, or the A field, or what he's saying is, if you believe right now, we're obviously pressing record, but we know through other means that our phone and everything else is being recorded, videos everywhere around, right? That's right. A fact. They're recording everything you say and do. If you can believe that, and 20 years ago, that wasn't even, thought of, you wouldn't even think of that. Well, if you think of kind of the Paul Chek Institute, all that stuff they're kind of out there. People don't understand it yet, but they think it's kind of, crazy. But what he was explaining in this book and in his theory is kind of about talking about the religion aspect, is all your intent, all your thoughts, all your good deeds, everything, if that's created by a God or whoever else, is being recorded somewhere in this Akashic field, or this Akashic record ish. And that kind of shifted. Okay. So in my head was, okay, do I have bad thoughts? Do I have bad intention to this person? All right. Because that can manifest with just your body language too. So if you have a bad thought in your head, you cross your arms, you kind of shift your body, you kind of give a smug, your answers are short, your tone, your pitch, all that stuff kind of changes just with a little thought, the inception of that. And so if you can put positive feeder mindset, thoughts into your head, and kind of curb it a little bit, then your posture may change, then your attitude may change, and all of a sudden you're winning. Yeah. You're winning. You're doing things better, yeah. Right? And so that just comes into a lot of different aspects. And so that book really resonated with me. There's another Jeffrey West from the Santa Fe Institute. He wrote this book on scale, which I highly recommend as well. But that'll give you a good look on the perspective of, all the way down to a snowflake and how it's manifested to each human is different, to looking at a large scale away from the earth and something much bigger. And those kind of things for me, I've always, thought about and just never really kind of deep dive and studied that stuff. And it's kind of like when you read these books, it's almost like, wow, I actually knew that already. But this is just validating a lot of that stuff. I referenced this in church. I never went, when I went to church, I never really sang, but I would think in my head, I would pray in my head. I never voiced it, but did we have to voice that? Do you have to cross your arms or, cross your hands and pray and say it out loud? Do you need to do that? And so that's kind of the Akashic field, this long, crazy out there stuff, but that changed within me. So when I'm, not necessarily driving in traffic, but driving in traffic is a good example. And Chief Daniel Luna talks about this a lot, about letting people not control your emotions. So if somebody cuts you off, you slam on your brakes and you yell, "Listen here, motherfucker, I'm going to get out of this car. I'm going to pull you over." You change your music, you change your tone, you're honking, you're screaming, and then you're upset for the next 30 seconds. And this person doesn't even know what they did. And so it's like, how letting all of that stuff and all these situations control your mind, control your body. It's kind of what I've tried to take over and self-master. But also, having all of those things recorded. So if you do believe in something bigger than, in religion, doesn't matter what it is, when you get there, someone's looking over that, right? Hopefully somebody is weighing, as Egyptians say, weighing your heart. Did you have joy? Did you have joy in what you did? And so that's totally out there. It's something I believe in reading, and first meeting Rudy for the first time at Summer Strong. I'd already read his book, Hero Living, and highly suggest that. But that has a lot of little tidbits in there, what he learned, and you can learn about, his life, but also the little things that drove him. And it's talked a lot about the same stuff.
So. Well, dude, I don't think you're off path there. I mean, one of the things that I talk about is a +1 mentality. And I talked about this yesterday with someone, but the idea being, I know how I look from a stranger standpoint. I'm a tall guy. I'm a big guy. I'm heavily tattooed. I don't have the prettiest face. So it's like, I know that the immediate perception, if you don't know me, is this looks like trouble. You know what I mean? And so I go out of my way to at least modify or give them pause. I try to make eye contact with everyone I can. I try to shake hands when I can. I try to open doors when I can. I try to give a compliment that's not necessarily physical. Oh, that's a very pretty jacket, or that's a good looking truck you got there, dude, or something like that. I mean, just simple things to break the ice. And I look at it because every single person that if you just if you put on a pair of sunglasses, kind of cock your head down and walk down the street, people are not doing that. People are not aware of others so much, and they're definitely not generally kind. I think the overwhelming reality is the world is a pretty kind place, but you have to almost ask for it. Like if you just go through life, it is not going to be a very friendly place. It's going to be a very gray and just annoyed and loud and frustrating place. But I would go about it like, I'm going to change how I approach the world. So I do that, and guess what? People are like, "Oh, well, how are you?" Like they'll just have a very nice response. Or when you hold the door, it's like, "Oh, well, thank you so much." And many, many times I've had people stop like 2 or 3 steps later and say, "I did not expect you to hold that door for me. Thank you." It happens way more than you think. And it starts with me. So the world has changed around me because of the intention and the way that I go about things. And I know that there are people out there that are hearing us talk about this, and they're like, "Oh my God, here we go again, intentional living and all this kind of stuff." Try it. Like if you're sitting there rolling your eyes at it, I was the same person. I was the same person that thought the world happens. And then I heard somebody say, life doesn't happen to you. You happen to the life you live. And it's like, wow, it really does give you the power to accept that life is happening, whether I sit here and pout about it or go through it with a smile. It's going to continue to exist. And I think for me, that was just a huge breakthrough, similar to what you're talking about, that just shifted my day. It shifted every day a little bit better forward. And then that opened doors that I never saw coming. And it opened my heart to people that I never would have let in previous. And it's just it starts to compound. There's momentum. Joe Rogan calls it, there's a momentum swing. And I know that for me, it's one of the best things that's ever happened, is just trying to be a more decent, kind, considerate human of others, because I was a selfish asshole for a long, long time. But go ahead.
No, that's in talking about a lot of the books I read, the quantum mechanics and not being able to explain that here or there, double split experiment, all these things that kind of, you can explain. They're very complex, but they're also very simple, like with your intent of just that simple thought of you being the observer in this situation, and you changed it by looking at the situation. And so that photon is going through that hole. All of a sudden you look at it and it splits and it goes two different directions, and it could be positive or it could be negative. Nobody really knows what's happening or what's going on with that. But, that's kind of my thoughts with the same thing with the A field, and there's M fields and there's other things, but that just, if you believe now, and you brought it up about the books that I read, the Asian culture and kind of that Buddhist stuff, I'm not really all in on that, but at the same time, I believe in a lot of that. If you believe in karma and dharma and all that, thinking positive and thinking negative, you can either use it or you can not use it and lose it. And I guess it speaks to my stuff that I built around me, and all these little checks and balances and discipline to try and be as, I joke, I put it on Instagram, but I say it at practice. It's, I'm trying to be great. I'm trying to, greatness. Yeah. Like, Muhammad Ali would always say that to himself, and I'm not comparing myself to him, but at the same time, the idea and the intent is really the same. Just trying to live my life, in a different, I don't have to be religious, or I don't have to go to church just on Sunday to do that. There's still 7 other days out of the week or 6 other days out of the week that I can still live in my church, live in my head, and just be positive. So
I love it, man. I really, I got a deep amount of respect for you, and I've appreciated you for so long from afar. And it's really good to have this conversation to hash out that, like I said, from 2 different roads. Maybe I was just going one way and you were going the other, and we kind of met in the middle on a lot of this philosophy and a lot of this outlook on life and coaching and whatever. But to wrap this up, I want to steal an idea from Craig Ballantyne, because you strike me as a guy who's probably thought about this question. A lot of people are working towards, retirement. They're working towards they have a vision of what life beyond the now looks like, and Craig Ballantyne has this system he calls the perfect day system. And he's like, listen, you can tell me you're building your business. You can tell me that you're growing a retirement. You can tell me all these things. But if you don't know why you're doing them, you'll never get there. And he said, to know what you're working towards, you have a perfect day. You have a perfect moment in mind. And I'll kind of tip my hat just so you can get an idea of what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I see at some point in the future flying my entire family over to Spain, going by the coast, spending some time there, eating wonderful seafood, smelling the sea, smelling the smells of Spain, the food, seeing the architecture, the art, and then going into Barcelona, catching a soccer match, hearing the music playing in the streets, the smell of paella at a restaurant, and literally just dancing on cobblestone. Like, that is, if I can ever achieve that, whether it's tomorrow or when I'm 70 years old, that will definitely encapsulate what I have dreamed and worked towards my whole life, is that moment. What about yourself?
Oh, that's definitely a tough one. There's a lot of, I guess, in the 24-hour period, you talk about packing in a lot of things and seeing a lot of people, and the place, north, south, east, or west, or special relativity, or however you look at it, the time. But I would say to pack in all that stuff, it definitely, I guess, things that it would involve. One, it would involve obviously my family, my immediate family, but it would involve things I like to do for myself personally, with getting up early. But I think the location for me, if it was me being selfish, growing up in Iowa, and I said, Fort Dodge, we have a lake house about 30 minutes outside of Fort Dodge, which is Twin Lakes, Iowa. And I have a photo that looks out of our deck, and it's really, we just have a small little cabin in that lake. But that location, here on this earth, getting out there, but here on this earth, I love that place. I could go Fiji, wherever else, but taking my vacations, I would go back there. It would involve having my whole family there, being in celebration of some kind. With that and all the little things that I wanted to get done for that day, I would have already gotten done, and then spent the rest of the day really, as the Buddha says, we need more festivals in a festival, right? In a collaboration with my family to celebrate something, whether it's, just that day or whatnot. But that would be it. Maybe my wife would have something different. Maybe she wouldn't want to be back in Siena, but Italy with her family and that side. And I would definitely celebrate that as well. But or if it was a different location, but the company that you keep is probably the most important. And then the location would probably be second. And then what you're doing, probably third. So, but that would involve those things. That's a good question, though. Yeah, I've heard you say that before, and I've heard some other people ask that, and I've reflected on that. But it really comes back to that, just that one beacon, that one location that keeps, that in Armageddon, this red dot that I'm trying to get towards. So that's what I'm trying to get towards, right? And I don't know how to get there, but that's there. But that's kind of the same. The radio station that I'm tuned into and the vibrations that I'm vibing at. So,
well, dude, man, I listen, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think it opens the door for you and I to sit down and have some deeper ones in the future. Plus you're in DC, which is not my favorite city, but it is definitely a top 5 city for me in the world. I absolutely love it out there. I have some really great people there. So I'd love to get out there and hang with you sometime, buy you a beer, buy you a coffee, whatever
Absolutely.
it is. We'll sit down and chop it up in person and maybe go deep water on some of the stuff that might be too taboo for the Sorinex podcast. So.
I love it that we literally, well, one, thank you for having me. Thank you to Bert, Pops, yourself, everybody. I'm a huge fan.
I appreciate you sharing it too. You've been one of the foundational people that shares almost every week, when we have something come out. So I really, really appreciate that, man. And I'm glad to come full circle and have you on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it that we didn't even talk about basketball or anything, or not too much training, and talked about other things, because obviously that's important too. So, but thank you. I'm honored.
It's a weird place for me to be, because, when I sit down and I talk to coaches, like I try to formulate this podcast, and I'm sorry for keeping you over on this point, but I think it's important for the listeners that are still here to understand, when I sit down and I talk to coaches, most of the time, the last thing they want to talk about is the reps and the sets and the job that they're doing. I mean, they'll talk about the highlights, they'll talk about this, that, and the other, but I really think coaches need to understand more of the human side of their peers. Like, oh my God, Michael Hill said this, like, holy shit, I've been feeling that for 5 years, and I'm allowed to feel that. I'm allowed to even say that. I think it's really good to chop this up in whatever way it goes. I mean, if somebody came on here like a Cal Dietz and went deep water on training modalities and the specificity of sport, I don't think anybody's going to be disappointed with that. But I really love these honest, structured conversations where you are a coach. We talk about that, but you're here because you're Michael Hill. You're not here because you're the associate director of human performance at Georgetown. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I try to walk that tightrope, and hopefully, the numbers are growing. The podcast is gaining momentum, and more than anything, I think that has to happen for it to be sustainable. But for me, I would rather have 100 conversations with 100 unique people and it be over and that be it, than to sit here and do 10,000 episodes of regurgitated garbage. And, I feel really strongly about what we're doing. I think I lost a little bit of focus there for a while, trying to understand what my position was with this podcast and what to do with it. But before the new year came, we really just dialed it in and we got a direction on it. And that's why I wanted to have you early on in this year, because January is almost dedicated to like a reset where we did some of the Summer Strong recap podcasts. But moving forward, I knew I wanted you to be one of the front runners. One, because you've shared so much of the podcast with other people. But two, you're just a guy worth listening to and talking to. So thank you very, very much for doing what you do, for being who you are and sharing what you share. I think it's very important what you're doing out there, more than maybe you even realize. So I'll leave it at that, man. Thanks again.
Thank you. Awesome.
All right. And as everybody, I always say this, stay strong, love yourself, and love everybody you can. Have a great day.